Why is the evidence justified in you reaching a belief and not an absolute belief? And if not, why does this specific belief you reject, but also you accept Jesus?
You bet. Do I believe in aliens? No, not at this point. Why? Because I have not been presented with enough evidence that aliens are real. But I'm open to it. If I'm given more evidence that aliens are real, then I'll believe aliens are real. Do I believe in evolution as a process? Yes. Why? Because the evidence in both a lab and on a breeding farm is life can evolve. Do I believe in evolution as an origin? No. Because there is not enough evidence that evolution has within it a creative mechanism. That is why I cannot accept evolution as an origin. But if I was shown that there's a creative mechanism in evolution, then I would believe that evolution can create.
Can you define creation mechanism?
Yes, something that can make something out of nothing. Something that can make non-life into life. Yes.
Why do you think it is the case that non-life ever existed, in a sense? How can non-life be? It seems like you think that we come from nothing.
No.
That nothing existed and now we exist. Is that what you're trying to find, a creation?
No. I think the evidence is the Big Bang is accurate. So, this universe started 15 billion years ago. The solar system about 10 billion years ago. The Earth about 5 billion years ago. Now, the question is, what was around before the Big Bang? Nothing. The only problem with that is, the only thing you get from nothing is nothing. You never get something out of nothing.
So how do you know there's nothing? So that with the Big Bang, it says what we know about the Big Bang is we know that if we trace back all our knowledge, that's where our knowledge starts. So it does not necessitate nothing before the Big Bang. It just says we can only know up to the Big Bang. So we don't know if there is nothing. Why? My question is, why do you think that there is nothing before the Big Bang?
Okay. I am not a scientist, but I get to speak on university campuses, so I get to meet a lot of scientists who are far more intelligent than I'll ever be. And those scientists who study the Big Bang have pointed out to me, Cliff, before the Big Bang, there was nothing. And the guy who discovered the Big Bang, Arno Penzias, that was one of his points. And the reason that Albert Einstein moved out of pantheism into theism was because of the Big Bang. Because Einstein began to realize, okay, before the Big Bang, there's nothing. All of a sudden you got something. There's got to be a creator. It's most reasonable to believe that there's an eternal God, an eternal mind, who can create something out of nothing. So that's how I think.
Second law of thermodynamics. The decrease in energy over time means that ultimately something began that, right?
I don't think that necessarily follows.
If there's a decrease in energy, wouldn't energy supposed to be stabilized throughout time if it's eternal? But because there's a decrease in energy, most likely there was a starting point.
Not necessarily. You can't. If we start at zero energy, you cannot. You can't start at very low energy. If you go down to negative, you reach zero.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that you do. Theoretically, you will reach zero up to infinity, but you never actually reach zero because you're just decreasing. Like if you keep let's say if you divide the energy that we have.
How do you never get to zero if you're always decreasing?
Yeah, because you're decreasing.
It's entropy. It's a matter of entropy as well.
But you're decreasing percentages, not in absolute terms. So you're decreasing half, let's say, or like 10% of entropy.
Okay.
And so you don't necessarily go to zero.
But you see, that's what scientists say. That's one of their biggest pieces for there actually being piece of evidence for there actually being a beginning.
So
it's you start at a certain high energy level, and as you decrease, it would make sense that there was a Big Bang, that there was some type of start to this energy that was powerful, and then it decreased.
Okay. I'm currently not convinced.
Okay.
That there ever existed
do you buy
nothing.
into multiverse or eternal?
No, I just don't know.
You just don't know?
I just don't know. I don't think I can be justified in believing that there never existed something, or that there was a point where there was nothing, or that there was a point where there was never a point when there was nothing. So my question is, if if it is the case that nothing never existed, then how does creationism play into that? If it was always the case that something existed at all the times, how does that affect your beliefs?
If something always existed, I don't think you get the material from the material. I think something must have started this place that is material, that is personal, and that must have been an immaterial God who is both personal, because we experience the personal, that is also eternal and outside of space and time. So it's ultimately a philosophical question. This is not a scientific question, because science gets that process. We're talking about origin here. And so scientism, which is very prevalent even on this university campus, is slowly trying to rule out history, the humanities, philosophy. And if those are all ruled out, then we're in a world of trouble. Science came from originally the Christian faith. Many different Muslims as well. I think Islam did some great things for science too. The Egyptians certainly did. But you look in our country and you look at Newton, you look at even Einstein was a theist, and his theory of relativity as well, when he talks about different forms of compounds coming together at the same time, popping into existence. That's why he talked about a Big Bang as well. And he said, if there is a start to the universe, there has to be an infinite cause. Just like the natural law. If there is a natural law, if there is gravity, if there is that natural law, there has to be a natural law giver.
I understand your point, but what I'm saying is, what you said, if the universe started, therefore God, right? But if...
Or some immaterial being that's infinite, outside of space and time.
But if we cannot conclude that the universe started, does that mean, don't you see that it doesn't follow that God exists?
Sure.
Right.
But you would have to prove that to me. Or you would have to give me a lot of evidence.
But see, here's my question. Why
but even then, so that's why I think Genesis 1:1 makes the most sense out of where we are at today, in the beginning. Because there was a great beginning. It clearly makes sense that Genesis says that.
No,
and so the Christian faith, again, remember, it's not a scientific question over whether Christ existed, over whether the Christian faith is the correct worldview, because it's actually a historical question, whether the resurrection truly occurred or not. So you don't get at the truth, the credibility of the Christian faith through evolution or ultimately through science. Science is answering the how. The Christian faith, the Bible, is answering why.
Just last thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned I needed to provide you significant evidence to suggest that the
eternal existence of the finite, the material.
So like the Earth or like the universe never started. My question is why is your null position that the universe started instead of the universe, I don't know if the universe started or not? Wouldn't be the most honest answer that the universe might have started, it might have never started. So I'm not going to believe in any of them. But it seems like you believe in one of them, which the universe has started, until some other evidence suggests you to believe something else.
Exactly. And that's why I would say you better look into the evidence over your philosophy, your worldview, when it comes to this life. To simply step outside and say, I'm going to be a full-blown agnostic and not really look into the evidence on either side and just live my life that way, I believe is not being a truth seeker. I think you came to this college, this university, for a reason, to be a true truth seeker. So to just step back and say, let's just continue to wait for more and more and more and more and more evidence. Look, the evidence could come in someday that could somehow prove, I don't know how it would, but maybe somehow a piece of evidence could somehow prove that Jesus wasn't raised from the dead. Then I would have to honestly look at you and say, being an honest truth seeker, I could not be a Christian. But to simply stand back and say, hey, we need way more evidence for whether the universe began, whether the resurrection actually occurred, whether Jesus even existed, whether Muhammad even existed. No, we have plenty of evidence for these things right now. We don't have proof, but so much of life is based off of evidence and faith, not proof. Again, proofism, thinking that I can prove just about anything, I break down proof into two different categories. One, that it's apparent to everybody here that something happened a certain way. And then 2, it's empirically verifiable. Those 2 ways. People define proof totally differently throughout our culture, throughout this social clique here, you name it. But those are the 2 that I go by.